I wanted to explore a simple question: DIY or modify? I found these inexpensive smart plugs at my local Menards store. These are available at a variety of hardware stores and, of course, on the internet. But as usual, you have to use their app and their cloud service. You sign up an account, providing a bunch of personal data to be sold off, all for the convenience of turning a light or fan on and off in your own home. Now, some of these devices may be soft hackable, where you reprogram or flash the existing microcontroller, but that tends to be very hit or miss, even between different revisions of the exact same product and SKU. So, I had a different idea. What if we could swap out their microcontroller with our own? A brain transplant, if you will. Welcome back to Justin Nelson's Projects. I'm starting a whole new series on home automation, and specifically using only devices that work 100% locally. My focus is on Home Assistant and ESPHome specifically, but similar modifications should work with other ecosystems or even a locally hosted web server on device. As for DIY versus modify, with the latter option, they've already done 90% of the work for us. We just need to do a little surgery to turn something we purchased into something we own. Sadly, these days, those two concepts are not the same. The goal here is simple: to own a light switch that doesn't need to be connected to the internet. No bouncing through some server halfway across the world that may or may not work in the future if they decide to no longer support a particular device, or they forget to renew their security certificate, or they go out of business completely, or any other technical or political reason that we have no control over. It becomes a butterfly effect where some random decision made somewhere in the world can suddenly make a light switch stop working. A light switch. Or, of course, DNS. It always seems to be DNS. But I digress. Today, I'm going to walk you through what I did to this very specific smart plug made by FEIT Electric. And yes, I did verify that pronunciation.
FEIT Electric.
And the irony isn't lost on me. I am going to win this particular fight. I want to modify this smart plug and later other devices to ensure that it can never phone home and is never reliant on anything other than my Home Assistant server running on my local network. Note that these projects will involve soldering, flashing ESP modules, and fiddling around with mains electric, so consider these videos to be entertainment and informative only. Do not attempt to do what you're about to see me do. I've never actually opened one of these before, but from experience with electronics projects in general, I had a hunch as to how these are constructed. And no surprise, the hunch was correct. As you can see here, there are two distinct circuit boards. The main board is really just a dumb electronically controlled relay. Nothing fancy here. There's a 5-ish volt power supply provided by the mains voltage. Then there's a standard 3.3 volt passive regulator that feeds what I'm calling the daughter board. Now, this smaller board is what controls the actual smart portion, the Wi-Fi microcontroller that's locked down to the manufacturer's control. Now, this board only has 3 connections from the main board: a ground, a 3.3 volt power, and of course an output to control the relay through an NPN transistor already on the main board, complete with a drive resistor and a pull-down resistor. Now, the reason I already suspected this modular approach is simple. Products are often comprised of a generic main component, in this case an electronically controlled relay and a power supply, and then a separate plug-and-play, in a manner of speaking, control board that the brand can design for whatever infrastructure back-end they want to use. All they need to provide is a microcontroller that drives a single 3.3 volt on-off output. In theory, this same mainboard is likely used in other branded smart plugs, and we will find that out as this series goes on. Now, with this knowledge, any 3.3 volt microcontroller should be able to control this dumb switch component. As a quick test, I did power up the device, but I never connected any app or let it onto my network. I just wanted to measure some voltages. So let's flip this on. Now we know that that's our ground, and this should be 3.3 volts. This second pin here. And we got 3.297, and test the theory that if I jump the 3.3 volts to that output connection, the relay clicks on and off. Let's listen. I'm going to short this. Probably shouldn't. Okay, so we know if we put 3.3 volts to that terminal, it will turn itself on. With all the testing done and the evil data harvesting smart board removed and desoldered, or desoldered and removed, now I had a choice to make. What microcontroller do I want to use? Well, it has to be small enough to fit in the allotted space, so that rules out a few of these here. But it also has to have decent Wi-Fi range, because I originally wanted to use the ESP-32 C3 Super Mini. It's a powerful little board which would easily fit. But in practice, I found that the Wi-Fi range on this board, well, it sucks. They made a revision in 2024 that sadly actually made the Wi-Fi even worse. And the ones that I happen to have are the 2024 revision. They use a ceramic antenna that kind of looks like a capacitor. And in practice, I can't get these things to work well more than a few yards or meters away from the router. So I dug out one of my old standby microcontrollers that I've used in many projects over the years, the tiny but mighty ESP-01. This is a 8266 based board, kind of like the D1 Mini and some others, but with very minimal supporting components. There's no voltage regulator, no USB interface, and a very basic UART that requires programming via a simple USB FTDI device. Note that it has a nice onboard antenna. Now, the nice thing about ESPHome is that once you flash the device manually, you can do any other future updates over the air or OTA. So that part only needs to be done once. Now, to make this ESP-01 work with this layout, we need to put it on a small circuit board. Luckily, not counting the pin header, which we'll deal with shortly, the ESP-01 is a bit thinner than the original board, even when stacked onto a piece of perf board. So, with a Sharpie and a Dremel-like tool from Harbor Freight, I cut a perf board down to about the same size and shape as the original board. You'll notice I'm using these little edge connectors as sort of tabs to line up with the 3 tabs on the original board, so that it'll slot right into that slot on the main board. This lets us use solder to support our board just like the original. Now, before we commit this ESP to its permanent place, we do need to flash it with ESPHome. I'll link to my YAML file below, but the process is really quite simple. Once you've created a new device, the first time you flash it, you do need to plug the FTDI programmer directly into the computer running ESPHome, in my case a Raspberry Pi 5. After flashing, to test the ESP before committing it, I simply used a phone charger and the FTDI board as a 3.3 volt power supply with just 3 wires connected, the ground, VCC, and the chip enable. I then measured GPIO2, and I toggled the state on and off from Home Assistant, just to verify that it turns the 3.3 volts on and off on GPIO2. So once programmed and verified, we don't need all the pins. So to make routing easier on my little Dremel perf board, I removed the TX, RX, and reset pins completely. I also removed the plastic spacer off the 8-pin header, as this lets me put the ESP board flat against the perf board. I did struggle a bit routing the wires around, making all the necessary connections, but basically everything is connected as you see in this diagram. I connected 3.3 volts to both VCC and the chip enable pin, pulling that high. I then, of course, routed a wire to the ground pin. Then GPIO2 goes straight to the output, but I also connected a 47 ohm resistor from there to the blue LED, which will simply light whenever the plug is switched on. I did intend to put a push button switch on this board to mate up with the plastic button on the front here. I got a little impatient trying to find a suitable button, and I just left that part out, even though I did program GPIO0 as input pull-up binary sensor, which is ESPHome speak for a push button. There comes a time in every project where you stop with the F around part and proceed to the find out part. Couldn't have said it better myself. So now I'm about to power up the 120 volt bare board that I modified, so I have to reiterate this video is for entertainment purposes only. That says unavailable. I'm going to turn the power on. That scared the shit out of me, but I forgot GPIO2 starts out high on boot. So it's always going to click that relay on initially. And look, it's available. So look at that, Home Assistant. Nice bright blue LED. As you can see, when I toggle the button in Home Assistant on the laptop, the lamp turns on and off. All local, no cloud server, no reliance on any third party. Now this is what I call UNshittification. At this point, it's a simple matter of reassembling the unit. So this goes in like that. The LED is lined right on up with that hole there. The button's gonna do nothing for now. Front cover is gonna go here, and I'm gonna squeeze her all together now. You hear it click, click. It says unavailable, and now it says off, which means it is connected. So there it is. Now, had I been a little more careful with the spudger when I first opened it, it would have simply clicked right back together. And it kind of did, but I didn't feel it was secure enough. I didn't want the cover popping open when I went to unplug it from an outlet, for example. So I went a little overboard using the soldering iron to weld the case shut. So I have several other entirely homemade ESPHome projects. Some I've been using for years now, but I do have footage and pictures from when I first designed and assembled them. And they will become videos soon in this series. Other project ideas are still in the idea phase, but will be coming to this series throughout the year. But I want to start focusing on, at least for relatively simple devices, buying something off the shelf and replacing the logic with my own. Now, let me know down below what you think of this series, and what specific devices would you like to see me attempt to unshittify. Buying me a coffee or joining my Patreon would help me justify buying devices just to void the warranty for your entertainment. All in all, while homemade is certainly fun and rewarding, sometimes it's easier and possibly safer to take a commercially produced product and just do a brain transplant. The high voltage stuff is already purpose built. We just need to change who's in control. So let's continue to own the products we purchase and not let them own us. Thanks for watching. Be sure to do all the YouTube things down below, hit all the buttons, and I'll see you on the next one. There we are. On, off, on, off. Yay!